You're listening to the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. It's fast, fun, free, daily deep dive Bible, and right now we're working on the book of Nehemiah. If you're new, welcome. You can jump in right here, or you can always go back and start at the beginning of any season. The whole podcast is available in an easy-to-use format at thetmbh.com.
Okay, this is pretty cool. You might barely, in the next room, be able to hear a conversation happening between two ladies. One is my wife, Camila, or Camilla. We both like the Spanish, and so I call her both. Camilla doesn't really work in Spanish because the double L, camilla, makes it sound like you're talking about a cot or like a stretcher that you'd carry people on. Camila is how they say the names. That's why sometimes you'll hear me say one, sometimes you'll hear me say the other. She's in there. She's one of the ladies in this conversation that's happening in the next room. The other is one of her students from Latin America who came here without the language. She didn't have English, and this lady wanted to get the language, and she wanted to become a citizen. So she embarked on this massive journey to accomplish those two things. You can't have the citizenship without the language, and it takes a pretty decent amount of proficiency to be able to navigate the citizenship exam. So it's a nice benchmark when Camilla's working with a student who she tutors. She does this for free because she has a soft spot for people in that spot. It gives you a benchmark, something to shoot for. We got to get to this level of proficiency in these ways so you have a shot at passing the citizenship test. And right before I walked in, I just got the word that this particular lady passed the test, and she's going to become an American citizen. And with any luck, she will get to be a part of the swearing-in ceremony that I think happens right on the 4th of July here at Mount Rushmore, which is roughly the most American thing I can possibly... No, it's not the most American thing. I mean, you could do a bald eagle release. You could give each new citizen an apple pie or have them play a baseball game. It's very American, though, is the point. At that ceremony, she's going to take an oath of citizenship, of loyalty to this country to say, I'm in. Your fate is my fate. I'm going to participate in this thing, thick and thin. I mean, really, the same way I feel about the country. I want to be here. I want this to be my country. I don't need to take an oath that says my country is perfect and I believe in dear leader in the party or anything like that. I'm allowed to think that my national family has problems. We do. I'm also allowed to think that there's a whole bunch that's awesome about it and be stubbornly persistent in being in and a part of it, for better or for worse. And that is what this lady in the other room is about to sign up for very publicly. Every nation has a concept in the modern world of people who are a part of the inheritance of that nation and people who are a part of the inheritance and the fate of some other nation. And it's quite the process to jump lines, and every single country in the world looks really closely at your paperwork, your documentation, your family heritage, whatever, to verify that you are indeed a part of their inheritance if anything that involves a part of that inheritance is in play. Likewise, it might sound kind of foreign to us at first as we go through Ezra and Nehemiah that there are people who are in and people who are out, and that these ancients were so picky about bloodlines and citizenship and who has a part in the inheritance of the returning exiles. But when you think about literally the conversation happening in the next room and all that it symbolizes, we're reminded, no, this is a timeless thing. All nations have some sort of a sense of identity and inness, or a sense of being a foreigner. And there's an expectation that when you're in, there's a degree of loyalty and you work for things that are good for everybody else, that build up and improve your standing as a people. And in Nehemiah, that basic expectation of what it is to be a citizen, of what it is to be a part of national inheritance, has been violated by a handful of people. And after Nehemiah gets done saying, hey, we got the wall built and that's awesome, he wants to make sure, in keeping with the theme of remembrance that runs through the book of Nehemiah, he wants to make sure the future readers like you and me will know that some of these people were turds and they did not uphold their metaphorical oath of citizenship because they tried to sabotage the project that is the rebuilding of the wall, and the rebuilding of the wall is the rebuilding of the people. Nehemiah 6:15. So the wall was completed on the 25th day of Elul in 52 days. High five for 52 days. When all our enemies heard about this, all the surrounding nations were afraid and lost their self-confidence because they realized this work had been done with the help of our God, as we talked about yesterday. Verse 17. But also in those days, the nobles of Judah were sending many letters to Tobiah, and replies from Tobiah kept coming to them. Now what's that about? We know a little bit about these nobles. This isn't the first time they've been on screen or received mention in the book of Nehemiah. And whoever these nobles are, you would assume these are the people who are most vested in their oath of citizenship. These are the people who should most appreciate what it is to be a part of this inheritance. But as is so often the fact, the person who most appreciates what it is to be a part of the inheritance is the person like the lady having the conversation in the next room who knows what it is to be on the outside and went through tremendous turmoil in order to become a part of this inheritance and a part of this country. The most entitled often don't appreciate that, and that would seem to be the case here as well, because Nehemiah is telling us that these nobles are conspiring with the enemies. They're conspiring with the people who want to defeat Nehemiah and defeat the rebuilding of the wall. What are you people doing? Now, you might look at this and be like, well, it doesn't sound like they're doing anything that bad. They're just sending a bunch of letters to Tobiah, a guy who's actively trying to have Nehemiah and the workers killed. And Tobiah keeps replying to them. It's a back and forth. They're just like pen pals. Why is that so big a deal? Well, let's read on a little bit. Verse 18, for many in Judah were under oath to him, since he was son-in-law to Shechaniah, son of Arah, and his son Jehohanan had married the daughter of Meshullam, son of Berechiah. Moreover, they kept reporting to me his good deeds, and then telling him what I said. And Tobiah sent letters to intimidate me. This is how I think we're supposed to receive everything that Nehemiah is saying here. People who should have been in, people who were under either a literal or metaphorical oath of loyalty and citizenship with the Jewish people and the returning exiles. In fact, the people who had benefited the most from that oath of loyalty, the people who had most soaked in the blessings afforded to them by being a part of this people group and a part of this inheritance of God's chosen people, they were the ones selling everybody else out. I'm reading Catch-22 right now by Joseph Heller, and the further I get into this book, the more humorously, whimsically disgusted I am by how the most entitled characters in the book dehumanize the other people in their squadron and start simply looking for ways to exploit the situation. It's set in World War II in Italy. They start looking for ways to exploit the situation for their own financial gain. One character in particular named Milo does that. He's brilliant, but also oblivious. To him, it all seems perfectly moral and right to do the things that he's doing, playing both sides, profiting off of the war while being a member of the squadron under an oath of loyalty. It's not even like he's being malicious. And at one point, because of all of his business dealings with the Germans and the Italians, I said it's whimsical, he bombs his own American squadron. And I was like, yeah, sorry, guys. We're going to get bombed either way. There's no reason we shouldn't profit off of this as well. And it's a pretty hysterical look inside that mentality, that detachment from your humanity and your loyalty and your sense of camaraderie with the people around you, because your mind is completely cluttered with the idea of cold exploitation. It seems like that's what these nobles were like. They'll exploit anybody. They'll exploit any situation. And remember, this isn't the first time they've done this. These are the same nobles mentioned at the beginning of chapter 5 in the economic crisis who were exploiting their own people, other people who were part of the same inheritance, so violently and ruthlessly that some of these people are having to sell their kids into slavery. And the nobles, yeah, they don't even get it. Yeah, sure, we're bombing our own squadron, but somebody was going to bomb our own squadron anyway. Cost of doing business. Yeah, sure, we're exploiting our own people with predatory lending tactics that are so bad that they're having to sell their kids into slavery, their daughters into the most horrific kinds of slavery. But if we didn't do it, somebody else was going to do it as well. At least this way, we all benefit. Everybody gets a share. We keep the money in the family. Gross! You've lost touch. You're insane. You're out of your minds. And Nehemiah is furious, and he publicly excoriates them in Nehemiah chapter 5, remember? And how do they respond after he demands that they are going to give everything back immediately? Give back their fields, their vineyards, their olive groves, their houses, and also the usury you're charging them, the 100th part of the money, grain, new wine, oil. Do it! Nehemiah demands all of this from them, and what is the nobles' response in Nehemiah 5:12? We will give it back, they said, and we will not demand anything more from them. We will do as you say. Well, depending on how you interpret the timeline here, apparently those were crocodile tears. That was false repentance. They weren't sorry about that at all. They just pivoted to another type of exploitation, or they had two types of exploitation running at the same time. And this other one is play both sides. Well, we'll work with Nehemiah and chum around with him. We'll come over and just shoot the breeze, get the toothpick in our mouth, put a foot up on one of the rocks, look at our underlings rebuilding the wall, and be like, yeah, pretty funny. No, we heard some stuff from Tobiah just through the grapevine. It's pretty crazy. What do you think about that, Nehemiah? Anything you would want to say about that? Yeah, that's crazy. We're totally not going to tell anybody for our own advantage. Well, good luck with the wall. We'll come back by and inspect the progress again soon. It's great. It's great work. Great work. And then according to what Nehemiah is saying here at the end of chapter 6, they would turn around and go right back to Tobiah, the guy who's trying to destroy the rebuilding of the wall along with his buddies Sanballat and Geshem. And they would tell him exactly what Nehemiah just said so that he would get intel from the inside. That's not loyalty. It's violating your oath of loyalty. You're playing both sides. So in the same way that you can hear me talk about this gal who's talking with my wife right now, who's about to become an American citizen, you can appreciate what that means and what it is to have a country and be a part of the inheritance of whatever country you're a part of. In the same way you can understand that, you can understand what that was like in the ancient world. They had countries, they had people groups, and here we are following along with one who we care about. And in the same way, you can understand that nobody likes a snitch and a traitor and a dirtbag who turns on their own people for financial gain. You can understand how much we don't like that now, so you can appreciate how much nobody was going to like that back then either. And Nehemiah is going to give them the albatross badge of shame to wear forever on their family name for what these guys did. But there's one more very important detail to one of the huge themes of the whole Old Testament, including Ezra and Nehemiah, that we need to unpack from these few verses, this little tag at the end of Nehemiah 6, and we are going to do that tomorrow. Finally, upstairs, we got a table full of envelopes with the single Matthew sticker in each of those. There's nothing, there's no dress up here. It's just a sticker. It's in a little envelope. That's it. It's going to show up. It's going to be pretty nondescript. Additionally, at random, a few of you, just a handful of you, are going to get a TMBH fridge magnet because they had some sitting around and they could fit in this mailing. So we just stuffed it in a few envelopes. If you don't get one of those, I don't think it's like a personal, we're not in a fight or anything. If you did get one, it just means randomly one got dropped into your envelope. That's pretty fun. Enjoy your fridge magnet. I don't think I've ever said that phrase before. I really enjoyed it. There is one more wave of stamping and mailing that we are doing as we finish this up this week. So if you're kind of been on the fence and you want to jump in, if you jump in today, maybe still tomorrow on Patreon or any of the support stuff, you'll get picked up with that last bit of the Matthew Achievement Unlocked sticker mailing that we're doing this week. If not, no worries. I'm just glad that you're here and we get to do this, and it's fun to be able to send stuff to people to say thank you for helping to make it happen. All right. I think the conversation between my wife and her student has wrapped up. I'm going to go hug and congratulate her for helping another student do the citizenship thing. That is just awesome. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.